There are a couple of these things that I'm curious about. A couple of these clips that are available to me that I'm like, well, what could that be? Well, what could that be? One of them is this one. You know how I feel about, let's say, RFK Jr. Coming into the HHS, and if he indeed does, that still remains to be seen, but that he only really has two options to deal with things. Carrots and sticks. Subsidies, or, in the case of, food companies, that they're going to make them take an additive out. No, okay, you're going to have to pay them to make up for it if you don't have a scientific study that proves that it's, more harmful than good or whatever. And then the other one, of course, is regulations, which is standard government shit. Like, they're not reinventing the wheel, and they're, walls and wheels, they're always the same. So in this particular instance, you got somebody on Fox Business. The most infuriating Biden regulation revealed by economist. This is Steve Moore. Let's see. President Biden filing the Federal Register with the most regulations of any president in a single year on the bottom line. So apparently, Biden did more regulations than any president ever, which just goes to show you that most of the time presidents don't do it. The House and the Senate do. But here we go. Let's see. Let's see what I'm curious if it was the most ever in a year, what could possibly be the worst one?
Americans voted for a brighter economic future and voted out Bidenomics. But Joe Biden seems to be the only one who missed that memo. He did a speech at the White House, like remarks on the quality of their economy, which compared to the rest of the world coming out of COVID, kicked total ass. And he was absolutely right. And he regrew the economy. This is true. Just because people have bullshitted themselves or been bullshitted by the news into thinking that we had monetary inflation instead of supply shock is not his fault. It's the news's fault. In the case of MSNBC and CNN, that's a mistake or a failure on their part. In the case of Fox and Fox Business, it's a strategy. His economic legacy just today.
Most economists agree the new administration is going to inherit a fairly strong economy, at least at the moment. An economy going through fundamental transformation that's laid out a stronger foundation and a sustainable, broad-based, highly productive growth. That is my profound hope that the new administration will preserve and build on this progress.
None of that's true. Some of it, maybe one or two words. This coming from the official regulation.
Biden breaks record for most Federal Register pages filled? Oh. Filled? Do people, do they have a tendency to post half-empty pages? Fox? Filed, I think is what you mean? But okay. What do I know? I'm not a giant news organization with a huge staff. I make typos myself most of the time because I'm busy trying to get fill out the information for the show to get it posted online, but with a cat sitting on my lap at the same time. So that wants to be petted while I type, which is very difficult. I'm not that good typing with two hands. Biden 98,618, 2024 so far. Obama 95,913 pages. Could it possibly be that the Federal Register pages also filed in a single year? These are not just regulations, but the complexity of them, the explanation, because, again, the more freedoms you have, the more finely sliced they will be.
President who just broke Obama's record for filling the Federal Register with the most regulations of any president.
It's full? Oh, shit. Well, I guess Trump will have an easy time, because he can't pass any new regulations. He can't file anything. It's full. He filled it.
President in a single year. Are you ready? 98,608.
We didn't have to be ready. You showed it right away. The camera wasn't on you. It was on this the whole time.
18 pages of them.
Also, by the way, Judge Janine is interviewing Daniel Penny, the guy that from the news thing, the guy who went to jail for choking the dude out and whatever.
And he's on pace to surpass 100,000 pages by the end of his term, whereas Obama, in the final year of his second term, filled nearly 95,913 pages with federal regulations.
Oh, good grief. All right. Joining us now, senior economic.
Yeah, you don't realize there's not like regulations aren't like a single sentence. They have parameters, and those parameters can be very complicated, especially and by the way, more than likely Trump's going to add a bunch of shit. I mean, think about all the stuff that all the things RFK Jr. wants to regulate. Think about this for a second. Like, how much paperwork is that going to take? Scientific studies, you're going to put those in with them so you can reference them. You see what I'm saying? And then he's going to like finer and finer slice what additives are okay and when and all that kind of stuff. And he's not going to just do right. No more red dyes. Like, you think that's how it's going to work?
Advisor to the Trump campaign, co-author of the Trump Economic Miracle, Steve Moore. There he is. Steve, regulation, not always everyone's favorite subject, but in this case, it is the key, because it's not just a lot of pages of regulation.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of costly regulations that hurt medium-sized and small businesses.
Yeah, terrible. Because of the number of pages, I think that's what it does.
Especially, this is going to reverse under Trump in a big way. What does it mean for the economy?
Is it, though?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right, Brian. I mean, by some estimates, the regulatory state is a $2 trillion additional tax on the American economy. $2 trillion.
Or you could lose $5 trillion in productivity because people are being poisoned on the regular from their food and water. See what I mean? Or losing their hands at work and therefore not being as productive, certainly at typing in the future.
And on top of all the taxes that we pay. By the way, when I first came into Washington in the late Reagan years, there were about 50,000 pages of the Federal Register. Now, if I look at your numbers right, it's close to 100,000. So we've doubled the size of the regulatory state with all these rules. And you made a...
No. Okay. It was 50,000 pages a year under Reagan. So every 2 years he was putting in what Biden put in the last year, in theory. And I would like to remind you that the computer I had during the end of the Reagan years had 512K of RAM. Oh, sorry, of ROM. RAM, yeah. It had RAM, and then it didn't have any ROM at all. You didn't have a hard drive at all. You saved it on the hard floppy disks, which weren't floppy, except on the inside. They were floppy on the inside. That sounds dirty.
Another good point, by the way, that, oftentimes the big businesses, the big corporations like regulations. You know why? Because it makes them more competitive. They can absorb the costs. A small business can't. So it plays in the favor.
Wouldn't it matter what the regulations were?
Of the big guys, and the little guy gets crushed.
I have to say,
under 98,618 pages, beg your pardon.
Stephen, there's this sense that, and people maybe glaze over when you think about.
Yeah, totally. Whenever he's on, I glaze over. That's true. It's mostly, I blame the jacket.
Out talking about regulations, but Americans have learned through Trump about the importance of dealing with this. The more regulations exist, the stronger government is. It is a symbol of the growth of government,
No, ma'am. Excuse me. Let me give you an example. Thou shalt not kill is a regulation, and it applies to every situation without fail wherein your actions result in the demise of one of your fellow human beings. Now, we in the United States bifurcate and trifurcate and sextuplefurcate, maybe, that number out into a bunch of different things. Yeah, like, well, it's not that you can't kill. You can kill somebody in self-defense. And if you do kill somebody, as a choice, you might have done it as an impulse. So therefore, it was a crime of passion. So maybe you won't do it again. You can be rehabilitated. If you planned on doing it or if you killed a bunch of people, we're going to put you in jail for longer. You have more freedoms because you have more definitions and more regulations about what constitutes killing than if you just have one big rule. Now, if you guys want to go back to one big rule, feel free. Because I guess you would have to lock up every person who's ever fought in our military, technically speaking. Yes? Don't get me started on turn the other cheek.
A blob-like entity that when you've got enough...
Oh, by the way, the blob phrase has been, is their new phrase for the deep state. It's this amorphous thing. And the reason they want to do that is because it like... bureaucrat was too specific, made you think of a pencil-pushing asshole who's following you around going, this is not efficient, which is now what Doge is going to do. So they're trying to pretend that they're not just becoming fucking bureaucrats. So they use deep state. Deep state are the unelected, unappointed people who are working in government, of which Trump has dozens and dozens that he's thrown in there and that he will put back in there that are going to work in concert with him on the regular. So apparently they're not the deep state because they're the whatever, I don't know, the shallow state, which actually makes more sense. But the blob idea is that's supposed to make you view this whole thing as incomprehensibly complex. You can't even get a grasp on, or a handle on it, right? Okay.
Regulations or laws.
Thank you, Yvonne.
It means when we wake up in the morning, we're breaking a rule or we're breaking the law. I mean, that.
No, it doesn't. You weird lady. Ma'am, excuse me, you're an asshole. The regulatory state is not that extreme.
That's one of the problems with it.
Granted, maybe I'm taking this personally. When you say we, maybe you and your husband are engaged in some sort of, I don't know, real estate scheme to defraud people.
This.
I think one of the regulations that really infuriated people the most was when the federal government started telling people what car they can drive.
Yes,
and that they can't use
exactly.
gas stoves. Things that hit them right in.
Okay, nobody was told they can't use gas stoves. Notice how he jumped to that. And they're not telling you what kind of car you can drive. They're saying there are limits on what kind of cars you can sell. There are already ones. There are already lots of rules about the kind of car you can buy. You can't buy a nuclear car right now. You can't make or sell a car that runs on nuclear power. It might run forever. You might be able to convince yourself that you've housed the energy storage and production part of the engine in concrete and lead, so it'll never get out. And the car can be as heavy as it wants because it can propel itself and whatever, but you can't do it. That already exists. What he means is the amount of pollution your car can produce, because there is no electric car mandate. Just the standard of the output of fluorocarbons and pollutants that come out of a car have gotten higher and higher over time because they're not good for people. Yeah, that's right. You can in Russia. Absolutely. Well, that's what he envies. I mean, I personally think he should move there.
Gas stoves.
Right at home, right.
Gas stoves. Fuck you. You can have a gas stove. You just have to ventilate it, you dumbass. Because unventilated gas stoves in impoverished areas cause asthma and cost us all a shit ton of money. You know what you can't do? You can't thin out the herd in a fucking emergency room on a day with bad air quality, which is filled with kids with asthma on the spot. You can't just run them out. But you can interfere with the process that makes more of them end up there. Fukushima Motors. That's right. I'm opening that next week. I've got a developer. I got some venture capital money I'm working on.
Because people are saying, wait a minute, the federal government is telling me what I can put in my kitchen. I mean, whatever happened to keep the government out of the boardroom and the bedroom. But
excuse me, abortion asshole. Listen, no. There are federal regulations on safety and security for the American people that are ubiquitous across the country. The federal government, in terms of Medicare and Medicaid, for example, are on the hook for people in Alabama who have asthma because they were raised in a house with a gas stove with no fucking ventilation. All right, Normal Nod is saying my gas stove has zero ventilation because my house was built before those regulations existed. Exactly. And that's all they're saying. Going forward, that's what you'll have to have. And that's on new builds. It's the same thing with electric cars or cars with, that pollute less, technically speaking.
If I may, I'm so angry.
You may not.
About this speech that Biden gave today, acting
good. I'm enjoying the fact that you're irritated.
As if he's handing the football off to a great economy. Well, and it's improved a lot. Have you noticed in the last 30 days? Did you see what happened with
Because you guys have changed your mind. Yeah. The opinion of Republicans and how they feel about it, right, has changed immensely. Yeah, our economy's great now that Trump's won the election.
The new numbers from the National Federation of Independent Business. Yeah, the small business confidence went way up. Consumer confidence has gone way up. The stock market has gone way up. But I think that Biden will go down in history.
That's because it was weighed down by Republicans who were pissed and angry and lying and being told a story. They changed their mind not because the material reality has changed. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are now finding out or know that his tariffs are going to cost them more money. Jesus.
As a very unsuccessful president, probably the worst president in my lifetime,
because he passed an infrastructure bill and the CHIPS and Science Act and the American Rescue Plan and got everybody vaccinated and everything back up, and he doubled the stock market during his time in office and had the lowest run of unemployment in 4 years. Now, keep in mind, in all fairness to Jeeves over here, he considers low unemployment bad because labor has too much leverage, and that's bad for business. So, of course, he genuinely thinks this. He genuinely believes this.
Because of the 3 Ds: debt, deficits, and declining incomes for the middle class.
Such a good point. I want to move to this, Steve.
Yeah, except none of those are true. And the debt, a third of our national debt happened under Trump.
With you, Canada's Justin Trudeau now promising to retaliate if Trump goes through with his proposed 25% import tariff.
Yes, so in response, Trump gave a masterclass on trolling with his Truth Social post. Quote, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada." I just love this man. "I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the results of which will be truly spectacular for all." Stephen.
Well, this is classic Trump. It really is.
Yeah, it's ignorant horseshit. It's just dumb. It's infantile.
It's like, calling the prime minister of North Korea Rocket Man. Yeah. He's so clever at these terms. But,
Yeah, he totally is with these terms. No, he's not. And Canada did not, like North Korea had rockets they were threatening to fire at the United States. They have been. They increased the number of nuclear weapons in their stockpile during Trump's time in office. Clearly, none of his interactions had slowed that approach at all in the case of Kim Jong-un. So he didn't gain anything from going over there and shaking his hand. It didn't benefit us at all. It benefited Kim Jong-un for a time, but they've just basically shrugged it off at this point. And Canada did nothing to us. Other than, I guess, the fact that Melania thinks Justin is cute.
When I was growing up, there was a famous book by Alex Haley called In High Places, a real classic, and it was about, will Canada become, another U.S. state? But I think the point
no.
that Trump is making, though, is important. Look, if you want zero tariffs, you can become part of the United States. We don't have tariffs. Canada doesn't. California can't put a tariff on Oregon. We're a 50-state free trade zone. And he's also saying, look, keep the drugs out of the U.S.
Hang up. Drugs aren't getting into the country via Canada at all. Keep them out. And why would Canada be on the hook for what happens at the southern border of the United States? This is stuff coming in through Mexico or in through the ports where most of the fentanyl that enters the country comes in via American citizens and through the ports. Vast majority of it.
West, help us fight the war against fentanyl, and we won't put a tariff on it.
What part do they play? For real? Has he ever gone anywhere near this? I mean, fuck this dude, but has Trump or anybody around him gone anywhere near the idea? Well, you know, Canada is this huge source for one of the precursors, or because of their relationship with China and Vancouver, it's flooding in through Washington and coming in on, you know, their fucking boats coming in along the, you know, down the, across the, like, Oregon, you know, and throwing bales of drugs into the water, and they wash up on shore, and children find them, and they're rainbow colors.
I mean, what's so difficult about that?
Yeah.
Well, one, it's impossible to stop something you have no part in. You fucking weirdo. God damn, this is childish.
Yeah, it's not difficult, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult for a country that it does not participate in the trafficking of fentanyl or the production of fentanyl or the buying and usage of fentanyl in the United States to do anything about it. Honestly, the fuck are they talking about?
Trudeau understands this. Nobody's been home in the United States for 4 years, and they're now being reminded that daddy is in fact back. All right, Steve Moore, thank you.
Jesus Christ. Can you guys keep your daddy issues off the air? Yikes. Daddy's back? This is Fox Business. Look, I get that whoever the fuck is on before Fox and Friends on Saturday mornings can talk like this. Because this is like Fox Romper Room. But in all honesty, like, and did somebody say he went to New Trier too? I mean, doesn't surprise me. Did I put him in a locker at some point? I mean, I wasn't that kind of guy, but it came up a couple of times. It's mostly retaliatory, although nobody actually put me in a locker, so I don't know how this would have worked out. Maybe I just probably snagged his girl. That's probably what happened, or somebody thought was his girl, because obviously she wasn't. But the worst one was apparently what he said was the electric car mandate, which is not a mandate at all. It's just lowering emissions. And what they mean is anti-pollution stuff. Anything anti-pollution they're against because it costs businesses money. Now, the reality is that Europe has more stringent laws about that. And if we're going to sell our cars there, or if Japan's going to sell cars there as well, or you know, South Korea is going to sell their cars there, they will match the standard of the high water mark. So our standards even aren't as high as the one in some European countries. So it's not like we run up against them where they're like, oh, fuck, now I got to double, you know, what we're doing to sell our cars. Like, our cars are already made to the standard so we can sell them overseas. If we were the high water mark, you could say, okay, tamp it down to what the generalized thing is, but we're not by any stretch. And it's not going to change a fucking thing.